Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. This is Rapid Reaction brought to you by Buyers Auto. I am Austin Ward, joined by my buddy Berm. We've got a new, revised, reshuffled Big Ten schedule. Ohio State has the same 9 opponents. They're going to play in the same 9 venues that they were scheduled to in 2021. So not a huge amount of change, but some of the dates in between Minnesota on September 2nd and the game on November 27th have been changed. And Ohio State's going to go 2 games in a row without getting to play Michigan in the Horseshoe, which I think is probably the most noteworthy non-change in this schedule, Berm.
I mean, I'm not sure what the value is of making sure they stay on the home away thing that they had planned on doing, for the last 20 years, because it shouldn't matter. If we were able to just dismiss the game this past November, I don't know why we can't just arbitrarily change the location for next or this coming November. But ultimately, I think the schedule changes that happen are probably beneficial for Ohio State. It seems like it's not going to be as backloaded as it was with Penn State and Michigan back to back in front of the Big Ten championship game in December. And so it does at least open up a little bit for the Buckeyes. I'm personally just glad we don't have to go to Minnesota in November. So I'm glad that we're going to keep that Thursday night date in September 2nd in Minneapolis. I think that'll be a fun one to shoot and a really good time to be in Minnesota. It should be beautiful that time of year, I hear. But ultimately, it's just one of those things where the Big Ten, I think, is doing something today just to do something today.
Well, I think that there were concerns about, the changes they made and the crossover opponents and the things that didn't balance out from a year ago. And I understand that, they can't focus everything on just what Ohio State wants and needs, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me to have your marquee flagship game and Ohio State just doesn't get their opportunity to have the rivalry in the Horseshoe. That's not just a, traditional alternation or that's a huge financial penalty for Ohio State through no fault of their own. They don't get to have the most important game in their stadium, whether that's recruiting, whether that's selling tickets, whether, all the things that come with it, a game day in Columbus. That's kind of a big deal. And to have that taken away, does it change really the quality of Ohio State's schedule or their opportunity to win that game against Jim Harbaugh? Again, I don't think so. They've won plenty in the Big House, so I don't think that that's it. But it seems a little unfair because it would have been so easy. The date of that game wasn't going to change. The game was going to be played no matter what. Why not just swap the venue? I don't see any reason not to do that.
Well, who knows? Maybe we'll see some Wolverines players wearing "Win One for Jim" headbands or whatever, because it potentially sets up, if Michigan goes out and is 8-3 heading into that weekend, it could be Jim Harbaugh's last game against Ohio State, and it certainly makes it a little bit more daunting, I guess, to have to travel up there after Thanksgiving. But hell, I mean, what are we talking about the schedule for right now anyway? We still have no idea if football is going to be normal in 9 months. But I guess I'm glad.
Don't you want to pretend like it's normal, Berm? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I love pretending that things are normal, but it's not. Nothing really changes, as you said, from what we expected when you look at the schedule. The Buckeyes are still going to host Oregon in the second week of the season. They're still going to get a long week of prep for that, going from the 2nd of the Minnesota game to the 11th. So, I mean, I think that I think it actually behooves Ohio State to have the schedule change the way it did. So I guess it's just more proof out there that Kevin Warren and the Big Ten will do anything to help Ohio State.
Oh, well, that's news to me. I think, just to run it down quickly, if you haven't already seen it or need it here, that's September 2nd, Ohio State at Minnesota. Next Big Ten game, October 2nd at Rutgers. That game was originally supposed to be at Nebraska on that date. October 9th, Maryland. That was supposed to be Purdue initially. Off on October 16th. That's the same bye date. At Indiana on October 23rd. That's a swap with Rutgers. October 30th will be the Penn State game in the Horseshoe. That was originally going to be Michigan State. Berm talked about that relieving the logjam of competitive games at the end of the year. Penn State was supposed to be the next to last week of the regular season, followed by the game, then the Big Ten title game. That will not be the case anymore. At Nebraska on November 6th. That was supposed to be Indiana. November 13th in the Horseshoe against Purdue. Back-to-back home games, November 20th, Michigan State. The Spartans will be in the Shoe. And then November 27th, as I said, in the Big House. Big Ten title game is December 4th in Indianapolis, where the Buckeyes, of course, have been 4 years in a row and will be the favorites to be for a 5th. So if you're looking at the major takeaways, Ohio State not getting the rivalry game in the horseshoe, moving Penn State to October 30th, and then you don't have for Ohio State consecutive conference road games. Now, Minnesota and Rutgers is the reason that is, but there's the 3 non-conference games in between, so Ohio State won't have to go on the road back to back as they have had to in several other years, which is a daunting thing. Coaches don't like that. Ryan Day, Urban Meyer, any coach in the country, they don't want to go conference games back to back on the road. So Ohio State did get a little bit of a bonus there with, they get those first 2 out of the way with the break in between, and then they will have the return on that back-to-back home games in November, Purdue and Michigan State. A little bit of an, as you said, Kevin Warren bonus for the Buckeyes there, Berm.
Yeah, and you look at it, I know people are going to start looking at the schedule already and be like, okay, what games are going to be night games? Again, Penn State is probably still not going to be a night game for Ohio State, even though it's October 30th. That's when the World Series is happening. It's going to be a Fox game of the week. It's going to be noon. We can just start ticking off all those people right now. But the week before against Indiana, I would imagine the Buckeyes will be playing at night in Bloomington. So there's the ABC game potentially between Ohio State and Oregon could be a night game, but who knows? Those are both Fox owned conferences. So you could also be looking at a nooner for that one.
Well, if we're going to play that game, Berm, if Fox would have an interesting choice to make, if they're looking for their marquee games, and if they take Oregon and they want that to be a big noon game, which is certainly possible, maybe that means that the Penn State game could be at night, and if ESPN ABC gets a chance to take that week, which I'm sure that they would jump at that opportunity to do so, but that's getting way ahead of things.
Oh yeah, but we're pretending things are normal.
Oh, okay. I normally don't start figuring out if it's going to be a day or night game in February. That's just you. You're probably already trying to figure out the forecast.
I've already looked it up. I mean, trust me, that was, again, the first thing you look at. You're like, okay, well, Minnesota, we're not going to have to be in the real cold there. That's good. Michigan State, it's definitely going to rain or snow that day, November 20th. It always does when you play against Michigan State, so you can pencil that one in as an inclement weather game. Other than that, Nebraska on November 6th, I'm not loving that exactly. I think that one's going to probably be wet, but other than that, no big deal.
Which of those road games do you think is the most daunting for the Buckeyes if you had to pick one?
Well, I mean, I think that probably going to have to be Indiana. I think that the Hoosiers obviously believe that they are the second best team in the Big Ten after the way this year went. Michael Penix will be back and healthy. They feel like they had the opportunity to beat Ohio State this year and didn't. They've been, a team that generally plays Ohio State pretty close, especially in Bloomington. Or at least in the last decade, they've been a little bit of a thorn in the side. I think that's the big one. That one, and then again with Penn State directly after, I think that's the real 2-game stretch where you're like, okay, here's where things get kind of the defining week to week of the season for Ohio State as I look at it.
Yeah, well, I can't really argue with you there. Those 2 teams have proven to be much more competitive against Ohio State than Michigan has. So even though some people believe it's sacrilege to not have that one circled as the most important game, really hasn't proven to be for the Buckeyes in quite a few years. But we know when it is, and we know where it is now, as the Big Ten has released their revised schedule for 2021. Hopefully we don't need 2 or 3 more versions of it this year like we got a year ago. But if we do, we'll have more rapid reactions brought to you by Buyers Auto. He's Berm. I'm Austin Ward. We cover Ohio State football all year at lettermenrow.com.